Hey, welcome back. This is part two, or video number two of the putting the engine together, major assemblies together to make an engine assembly. So we're going to continue in this video with installing or setting the exhaust nozzle housing onto the back of the cowling or stator assembly, and that will encapsulate the turbine wheel, and of course the bearing will then start holding that end of the shaft or the rotor. The little stub shaft will be engaging into the turbine bearing. Okay, so we'll get going here and use this hoist and lift the assembly and let it down. The hoist is a lot better than people because it'll hold it steady. You can let it down easy, which is, so you don't bang things together in case something doesn't want to go right. It gives you a chance to see what's going on before somebody gets tired of holding something up here at this level, for a period of time. And it makes you be able to do it by yourself, which is good. I don't have to keep relying on people to come and help me. Alrighty, so here we go. Well, in preparation of installing this exhaust nozzle assembly onto the back of the cowling, and this is the turbine shroud. This is a ring of steel, some kind of hardened metal. I'm assuming some kind of steel. This metal ring is very close to the tips of the turbine blades. This will be one of the clearances we have to check once this is assembled. Alright, and that fits into this housing, and there is and we can look here. Okay, inside here is a gasket. It's like a stainless steel braided rope type material, and it fits nicely in there, and the edge of this shroud more or less embeds into it and compresses it into the little cavity all the way around. So that, I guess, seals the gases from leaking out, and then this flange just bolts straight with no gasket right to the back of the cowling or the stator assembly. This is held in place with a couple of with two really short, like 1/2-inch screws. One here, one here. They're all set a little bit. They're not diametrically opposed. Those are just to hold this in place, and then when this is all set and assembled, obviously all these screws clamp. Okay, we're going to put him or her up here where it belongs. Alright, using this hoist. We already got it rigged, and it's in its sling there, which is just a strap, heavy duty strap. And we're going to lift her up, set it in place, hopefully without too much trouble, and install some screws. So we'll set the camera up and get some shots of that. Alright, as you can see, we're ready to lower this in place, and it's going to be a little tricky. I know this isn't exactly level, but I'm going to steady it and straighten it as I let it down slowly, which is going to be tricky by myself, but let's see if we can pull this off. So hopefully with some little editing of some video, we can get this down on here without too much cussing or damage. I have coated the stub shaft with a little bit of turbine oil, engine oil, as well as, of course, the inside of the inner race of the turbine bearing. So those are lubed with what it'll be lubed as it runs, so that'll ensure it going together smooth. Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can let this down a little bit. It's got to be real close. And the key is here, we don't really want stuff to rub or hit. So let's stop right there. Alright, as you can see, I've got the stub shaft is started into the turbine bearing inner race, and of course you can see now that we've not setting level and completely down tight, but this case is engaged, if you want to say. So now we have to index it. I'll just carefully rotate here. There is a set of holes that we're going to try to index to here. Yeah, we're getting there now. See, we're very close. Get some more tension out. There it is. Now let's try to get this to drop in place. And bingo, look at that. Without any screws in it, it is. Okay, look there. You can see the gap is tight. I have the tension let off of this, off the hoist, off these straps. See, they're loose. So the weight is sitting on fully on there. There are no screws started yet. As I said earlier, there are these two screws, one here and one straight across from it, that just hold the turbine shroud in place for assembly. And the little bolt sticks through here. And it acts as a pin. It'll act as a locator pin. Just make sure it's set exactly where it needs to be. And the rest is just bolts and nuts. So we'll get those in there. That'll be the next step, as I said earlier. But just wanted to show you that I like to look for everything being nice, tight, flat. You know, you don't see any warps in the gaps, changes in the gaps. Just for it just to be sitting there on its own weight, no screws clamping it, that's good. And I really don't have any gaps. There's a tiny bit here, see? Okay, and other than that, that squeezes together with my fingers. I think we're good. Okay, people, there we have the exhaust nozzle housing assembly partially installed. Let's say it's in proper position, but it's only got 4 fasteners in it for the time being. I have not yet got around to getting them all installed. So it's starting to become a thing of beauty. There we have the engine. Intake facing down, of course. And here's our stator and main body of the engine, and then we have the exhaust end. And we still have the hoist attached for stability, and so it can't fall over. It's got just a little tension on it. Well, finally we have the exhaust assembly attached to the main cowling or main stator assembly. Got our screws and nuts in place and our rear engine mounts, and notice these have been modified. Mark at Bomar Industries was kind enough to machine these into slots, so we have now a little bit of give and take here for thermal expansion and contraction. As you can see, they're attached to the back of the engine, and we know that there will probably be a little bit of a change in the length of the engine as it warms and it cools. However minor it might be, because most of the change I would assume would be here at the very hot section, which sticks out beyond the engine mounts. So most of the growth would be here. However, you have, when you shut the engine down, you get the heat, that's residual heat, starts heating this cowling, which will allow it to expand, or cause it to, which would cause it to expand. So it was pointed out, as I said earlier, by Jay, and I think backed up by Graham J. So we got Jay and Graham J saying, give us some flexibility, and so I did. All right. I'm using this setup to snug the bolts, and I put the tape there so we don't mar up our finish. So another little tip, if you got some surfaces to protect from scratching and damage during assembly, by all means use some tape, protect it. We got the tail end bolted on. We're just about ready to I gotta lift this assembly up so that I can change the shim or spacer behind the compressor bearing, and that will to tighten up my tolerance. I have a little bit too much clearance between the compressor rotor and the intake housing, so we're going to adjust that. Well, finally, several weeks later, we are complete. I do have all these screws installed and torqued. The modified engine mounts are installed. You can see we have slots, as I showed earlier. The engine mounts are installed. All the bolts are torqued. As I said before, I checked clearances and they were excessive. Required clearance between blade tips and the intake housing. So we did a little checking. It was too much, unfortunately. But fortunately, I was able to remove the bearing retainer, which is this aluminum disc you see here. And guess what? The weight of the compressor shaft pressed the bearing down. I heated it just a little bit with a heat gun, and voila, the bearing came right out. I removed 20 thousandths spacer and leaving 40 thousandths, and put it back together, and we have now got an acceptable clearance of about 27 thousandths. The manual specifies 25 thousandths to 35 thousandths. So that tightened us up a little bit, got us not in the range we were looking for. So good news is I did not have to remove the housing or lift the cowling or anything like that. It's done. It's in there. It's turning. In fact, maybe we can give this a turn here, see if it spins. Yeah, look at that. It's turning. Isn't that nice? See the numbers on the blades? To find the longest blade in the group, and then that blade I had to check in 4 different spots, 90 degrees apart. And the way I did that was measure all the blades at one fixed point, and then found the one with the least clearance, that would be the longest blade, and then use it as my reference, according to the manual. So we're going to call this a wrap-up of final assembly part 2. We now have this as one assembly. I'm ready to actually, this is now ready to be indexed horizontally and set in place on my stand. We got some stand work to do. I've had a little bit of work done to it. There's more occurring, and I'm going to maybe make a little interim video showing that. It's kind of going over the stand and some changes we're doing. Now that we've got this ready to go, again here we're at a stopping point until the stand is fully ready to go, and so it'll sit right here, unfortunately, for a little bit longer. It's been a very busy summer. I've been working on my old rat rod, 72 Chevelle, doing some work to it. Been trying to lose some weight. We've worked a lot of hours at work. Some friends have had some projects. My buddy Mark, I've been helping him. He's building a new shop at his residence, and I've been donating time there because he's helping me, do things like modify engine mounts and redo my fuel cell on my engine stand so it hold more fuel and be a little better configuration for filling it. And we got a few other things going on here to try to get all this to come together. So please be patient. I realize people have asked about when I'm going to be getting her going, and I would have thought it'd been this summer. That was my original idea, but that's already, here it is, November the 1st as I make this wrap-up video. So let's we'll just keep plugging away at it. It may be cold and snow flying, I don't know, but one day if it's cold and not snowing, we'll get her out. If that's what it is, we'll get it out to start it and see what happens. Trust me, you'll be the first to know when I get it going. Alrighty, so I'm going to wrap this up, and then we'll start up some other, we're going to start another little video, and we'll explain a little bit about the engine stand. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching.